Good afternoon, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Deuteronomy in chapter 20. As we continue in this book, chapter 20 speaks about the time when they actually go out to war. So, when you, as the nation of Israel, go out to battle, and this would be a war, and this speaks about against your enemies. Now, this is an important statement. It is about your enemies. Um, and by looking at the word enemy, these are people who are hostile to you. And so this idea is about hostility. They are hostile. And so when you go out to battle against your enemies, and this means that it is not brethren. This is how it should be read, that when you go out to battle against people who are not your brethren, they are called enemies. And the scripture here deals with brethren very differently from enemies. And by enemies, uh, we see horses and chariots. And in this case, you could say uh, the enemies are considered these horses and chariots. They are seen as one person. And so the way that it resembles in the Hebrew, anyways, gives us an indication that enemies are seen as horses and chariots, as well as people. Now, in this case, people would be people of different nations, and in this case, people who are more numerous than you. If your enemies are more numerous than you, and this would be in your eyes, right? In your eyes. And you see them and you cannot count, and they seem to be more than you. The counter view of this would be that it is only more than you in your eyes, but it is not more than you in the eyes of God. Because chapter 20 speaks about how God is with them in battle. So God doesn't look at their number, but men tend to. And when you look at them and they seem to be more numerous than you, it says, do not fear them. Do not fear them. This is the same word that is used to fear God. So do not fear them, but fear God. For the Lord your God, Jehovah, is with you. The word with you is together with you. And it speaks about God who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Now, this statement here is a reminder of who God is. God here is the God who brought the nation of Israel out of Egypt through 10 plagues or 10 miracles, crossed the Red Sea in the wilderness for 40 years, being able to protect them, give them water, give them food to drink, protect them from enemies while the first generation of Israel died. But it is to remind them of who God is, because their forefathers saw God at Mount Sinai, Exodus chapter 19. I am this God. And this is what God is speaking to Moses, and Moses is speaking to the second and third generation of the Israelites. I am this God who brought you out from the land of Egypt. There is nothing for you to be afraid. Verse 2. And so it shall be when you are on the verge of battle. The idea on the verge of battle, the approaching battle. This is the word, meaning when the battle is coming, right? It's about to start, approaching the day of battle. The interesting here is that it is not the king who's going to do that, because there is no king at that point in time. The priest shall come and speak to the people. And this is the priest of war, priest who is a leader. Understand that the priest has many roles. Besides the rituals that God has required them to do, the priest is also the leader in battle. He says, and he shall say to them, hear, O Israel, today you are approaching the battle with your enemies. Remember, enemies, no pity. Do not let your heart faint. Now, the idea of do not let your heart faint, I guess you could say that do not be tender-hearted, or do not be soft-hearted, do not be weak-hearted. You make a decision, you stay with it and fight. So do not be timid. That's what is being described here. When you go to war, be all out. He says, do not be afraid. Do not be terrified. Do not tremble. Now, this word is aratz. Aratz means do not tremble. This is the word, do not tremble. Do not be at awe. Meaning, when you look at them, when you're facing your enemies, do not be shaking in your hands or in your pants. The next word is do not tremble or be terrified because of them. The statement here is do not hurry. Right? Do not hurry. Do not be hasty. It is not about trembling. The next word here is trembling, but it is in tremble in the sense of being terrified, right? Be terrified. Feel at awe. It is the same word here. So do not tremble, do not be at awe, do not be afraid of them. Basically, that is in a way saying do not be afraid in all these ways. Don't be soft-hearted, don't tremble, don't be at awe, don't be hasty, don't be terrified. For the Lord, your God, is he who goes with you. Now, this is important. He is the one who walks with you to fight against your enemies, to save you. And this word save is to deliver you, give victory. I think give victory is a good word, so that it's not about saving in that sense, but very much more so in terms of giving victory. God will give them victory because this is a righteous battle. And in a righteous battle, the righteous God stands with them. And so when you go against your enemies as God has so instructed, you have nothing to fear, even if they appear to be more numerous. Verse 5. Verse 5 tells us the officers, right? The officers shall speak to the people, saying, what man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? The idea of dedicate literally means inaugurate. There is a idea of celebrating it, let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. So if it's his house, go do it. The next verse, verse 6. What man who has planted a vineyard and has not eaten of it, let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle and another man eat of it. And what man is there who is betrothed to a woman and has not married her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in battle and another man marry her. Now, what does this mean? It means that if there is encumbrance, and it says about having a new house, having a vineyard, having a marriage. So go home, basically, go home. Do not go to battle. So God is a fair God. So in this case, although they are uh, in the right age group to go for battle, God has given them a chance to celebrate their lives, and so that in that beginning of their lives, or whatever it's worth, about a house, right? Uh, about a vineyard, about a marriage, he is to go home. That's all. And if there is something that will hold them back, then they will not be able to go into battle full-heartedly. Our next segment speaks of it this way. Verse 8, the officers shall further speak to the people. Say, what man is fearful and faint-hearted? Now, verse 8, when you talk about fearful and faint-hearted, fearful, terrified, you're supposed to be terrified of God, but not of your enemies. If you do, and if you are soft-hearted, right? If you are timid, these are the characteristics that you should not go into battle. Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brethren faint like his heart, that he would influence his brethren. Verse 9. And so it shall be, when the officers have finished speaking to the people, they shall make captains of the armies to lead the people. Now, captains here really means the leaders, the chief. It says here the chief of army, right? Chief of the armies. Sar Zavaot. Uh, and God is the Lord of Zavaot. And so we use the same word, Savaot, the armies. So when we see Jehovah Savaot, and in this case we have Sar, the captain, these are the chiefs, and so you have God as the army, right? The army. And here we have leaders, chiefs. And this is chiefs of God's army, and the chief of God's army are also listening to God who would drive them. That's basically the picture of going to war. You would find that the rules and instruction for Israel to go to war is not barbaric. You find that it is a very just approach to warfare. It says when you go near a city to fight against it, when you come to a city to wage war, right? This is the idea. To fight against it is to wage war against it. You will first offer peace. Have them speak shalom, right? Start with peace. It is a very interesting concept. Start with a call to peace. This is an offer, means a call to peace. It is very interesting because when you are going out to fight against the city, the first rule of engagement is to offer peace. Now, the idea here is if they accept peace, if they accept peace, uh, and this word is open. The word open literally means, how should we say? Uh, they are open to you. They feel free with you, or I think the better way is they open their gates. If they do not wish to fight, there is a reason, because they don't want all the innocent people in there to die, then all the people found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you. Now, this is important. What does that mean? Uh, all the people, that would initially, that would be the people called the enemy, and the enemy are now to be placed under tribute. Now, this word must, the idea of under tribute becomes, how should we say? It becomes, this is called serfdom, to be under service, in labor, and serve you. And so you find that these are people who would become, lack of a better word, slaves. They will become bonded people, that they are obtained in a battle. And if they said, no, we don't want to fight, then they all shall be serving you. And if it will not make peace with you, so not make peace means they're going to fight, but war against you, then you shall besiege it. Now, those are the styles of war in the past. Besiege means to go around it, bind it, right? Bind it, confine it. And so it will surround them until they would surrender. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hands, look at this. This is going to be how they are to treat the enemies. You shall strike every male with the edge of the sword. Now, every male would be every adult male, right? Every adult male. The idea of male here is the male gender. This is not every man, but every male gender. And I would say that this will be the adult male as opposed to children who are men or boys. But the women, the little ones, the livestock, and all that is in the city and all its spoil, you shall take plunder for yourself. And you shall eat the enemy's plunder which the Lord your God gives you. Thus you shall do to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not the cities of these nations. And so these nations actually encroach into the land of Canaan, and many of them do not originate from there. And so God says, you take over everything that is there, except that every male shall die. The women, the little ones, the livestock, you can take it all as spoils, that you have won the city and they all belong to you. And that's what happens to the cities that will not ask for peace. 16. But of the cities of these people which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, and only the cities, right? Only. But only of these cities, of these people, and these are also called enemies, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, as a heritage that they are to possess, then you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive. What is the difference? The difference is that if these are the enemies who are their native, then, right, then nothing that breathes remains alive. You shall not allow any of them to survive. So there are two groups of people. Up to verse 15, these are enemies of those people who came in from outside of Canaan and have built cities. And these, well, you can take them as bonded labor. But if these are cities of the people who are native in the land, in this Canaan land, then none of them shall live. This is a very serious action. The serious action here is to exterminate, and something which we're not used to. And so, as that's why in the beginning part of this chapter, chapter 20, it says this is not for the faint-hearted. This is not for those timid. These are not for those who have had a new marriage, a new vineyard, a new house. You have to be single-minded to go in for battle because we might die. And so here, either you kill them or they kill you. And so you shall utterly destroy them. Means this, if you don't destroy them, they will destroy you. And so you destroy them first. And so we are named the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite. You've read some of these names in Deuteronomy chapter 8. When you go in there and fight all these people, just as the Lord your God has commanded you. Why do you have to destroy them all? And these are supposed natives of the land. These are people who actually worship idols. If you don't destroy them and they live among you and you might intermarry them or they influence you, so look at what they do. Verse 18, that they teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their gods. And you sin against the Lord your God. So look at this. This is an A, this is a B. So do according to all their abominations is sin against the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. I am a jealous God. Now, it's not that they will go and worship these gods immediately, but these are gods of the people in the land. And if they are around long enough, they will teach you and you will learn to do what they do. And thereby you will soon sin against God. And so this is the whole aspect of let nothing that breathes remain alive. Because if you don't leave them be, they will kill you. And if you leave them be, well, they will change you. Verse 19. And so when you besiege a city for a long time, understand this. When you surround a city for a long time, that means you will run out of food. While making war against it to take it, then God says there is a rule. Do not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you can eat of them, do not cut them down to use in the siege, For the tree of the field is man's. That's what it means. It belongs to the man. Now, what does this mean? Well, when you are besieging a city, you actually need trees, logs. You need to build scaffolding. You need to build ladders. You need to use it as a pummel. You need to use it as a weapon of war. But God says, you do not destroy the trees by cutting it down, and particularly the ones you can eat of them. They provide you food because the tree of the field is man's food. So the idea here is right here, uh, right here. If you can eat it. So do not destroy the trees by cutting them down if you can eat it. Do not cut them down to use in the siege, for the tree of the field is man's food. So you have an A and a B. Well, clearly you're not supposed to cut it down if you can eat from them. You don't cut it down because you can eat from them. It's a slightly different way of saying it. Because if you cut down those trees, then you will have no food. So do not be foolish, be wise. Because if the siege is for a long time, you will need food. So do not cut down those trees. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food, you can't eat them. You may cut them down and destroy. This is an A and this is a B. You can destroy them and you can cut them down. What do you do with them? You are to build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it is subdued, until it is in submission. That's what it will mean, in submission. Uh, until it bows down to you. So this is what it means by subdue. They surrender. Now, we have come to the end of chapter 20, and we can see that there are interesting rules that God gave to them when they approach a war. That if it's a righteous war, the God is with them. The priest will speak to them and says, God is with them. And how is God with them? Well, God is with them because the ark is with them. And that depicts the presence of God. And that will come from the priest himself. And so oftentimes when you read in the Bible, the priest will assign the Ark of the Covenant into the battle, then it must be done in a righteous manner. And this is what God wants to do. And in chapter 20, you find that the instructions are to kill every one of them who are native of the land of Canaan. Those who are not native of the land of Canaan, perhaps they are from Moab or Ammon or Syria or somewhere else, and they happen to have encroached into the land and built some fortress or some cities, then you are to ask them if they are willing to give up and so surrender to you without a fight. And if not, then you are to kill their men and keep everything else as spoils, the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city. That refers to the people who are not native to the land. Verse 16, which we have covered, these are people who are native of the land. And so we have all these names being rattled out to us. The Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. And Jebusite would be down south in Jerusalem. And so this is important that they are to do exactly what God tells them to do. Otherwise, this word they, are the Hittite, Amorite, Jebusite, Canaanite, Hivite, and Perizzite. They will teach you to do what they do. They will teach you to sin against God. They will teach you about all the disgusting thing, disgusting acts, right? God will abhor their customs of worship. And of course, in summary, verse 19, don't don't cut off your food source. If there's a tree that provides food, you shall let it be. But the rest, it's okay. Because when the siege is long, then use your wisdom. God is not about to send them manna for the battle. Manna was only in the wilderness where they are unable to fend for themselves. But once they go into the land, then they are to serve the land and fight for the land as people who are wise with God in their midst, the Ark of the Covenant. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.